Hello and welcome to today's episode of TalkNRoll. Captain here today. Hawk will be back for another episode down the road. He's working overtime. But today we have from the band Bane of Olympus, Brian Kill. Brian, tell us about yourself.
Hey, thanks, man. Thanks so much for having me. I guess I could begin by revealing the big secret that the Bane of Olympus is really just me. So I guess like a lot of modern bands, modern guitarists, I've learned how to use the home studio, right? So I've got everything I need kind of right here. I'd show you if I didn't think my computer would unplug and my camera would go askew. But basically, man, I mean, I was like an 80s kid. So I was super into 80s metal, hair bands, uh, Poison, I'm sorry, Whitesnake, now Poison, we'll have to scratch that. Poison's like 7 times platinum album, a lot of Def Leppard. And so I always wanted to play the guitar, when I was a kid. And my parents got me an acoustic. I was like, oh, this is kind of lame. I don't know if I really, am into this. And I begged them for an electric, and they just like, they're like, you got the acoustic for Christmas. Like, we're gonna end it there. Um, and so I bought an electric when I was 18 because I got super into Slipknot. I got super into the whole like new metal scene. So I was like, me and my buddies were gonna start a new metal band. It's gonna be awesome. Gonna have some really offensive name. Gonna like scream a lot of swear words, everything that like an 18-year-old was destined to do. Um, but then I kind of like got tired of that music as I got a little older, but the guitar stuck, right?
Yeah.
So really like the sound is really In Flames kind of taught me everything I know about guitar. So in like 2000, Clayman came out, and I was just obsessed with learning how to play everything that those guys were playing. So I kind of taught myself hammer-ons using just like the tabs, taught myself how to play their tunes. And then, when the pandemic happened, just kind of really knuckled down on the guitar, got better, and started recording some songs. And it was like a learning experience, right? So I didn't know any of this was really possible. And then I got all my computer gear set up. I'd been in a band. I was just, I guess to just back up a little bit, I'm from Detroit originally, moved to New York when I was 18. And then in New York, we had kind of we had this sick like 70s style rock band called Super Thrust. Uh, and that was like more traditional, right? We had to go to a studio, we had a producer. And I was thinking that making more music was going to be difficult like that. But then with the pandemic, everybody's locked up. I just kind of discovered how much stuff I could do on my own. And then I didn't have to worry about creative differences, which is sometimes it's fun, but sometimes it's not so great. And I just started playing music that I really wanted to hear. So I mean, it's like kind of lame to say so, but I listen to my own stuff like all the time. Um, and it's all instrumental. So like people ask me, well, you got to add a vocalist. I'm like, it's really not written for vocals. Like the guitar melody, that's the vocals. And the name Bane of Olympus is really just, it's kind of like a nod to the gatekeepers. Like in the metal community, we have like the worst gatekeepers, the most strict gatekeepers ever.
Yeah.
It's like, this completely sucks. Like, you can't listen to that. And I think a lot of it doesn't get to like what I would call like a normal audience of like average people. So like I would play In Flames for people. And I think Clayman is undoubtedly the best modern metal album ever. Um, there might be something more recent, like Born of Osiris or something that's like a little more technical, a little bit better. But I think for like the 2000s, 2020, like that, then nothing gets better than that album. And then I think the era before that would probably be for me, Master of Puppets. Um, so I would play Clayman for people, and they'd be super into the intro, and then the singing would start, and they'd be turned off because the vocals were guttural, they were unclean. And I was like, well, if I could just kind of bottle the stuff that everybody likes and then leave out the stuff that people don't like, then I think people could get really switched on to metal and how fun, how good it actually is, and
Yeah.
how listenable it actually is. Because even me, it took me kind of a while to break in to be able to listen to stuff where there was like real intense screaming vocals, like a Slipknot, something like that. So I understand there's kind of a waiting in period, and if you can't get past it, like it's probably never going to be for you. At least that's how I approached it. So that's kind of how the genesis of it all started. And then a buddy of mine from my band back in New York, he's more or less the label that I'm on. Really good guy. His company's called Labyrinth PR. And he's a Berkeley Music School guy, so I'm really lucky to be associated with him. And he's helped me with like writing pieces and tightening up songs. And yeah, it kind of took me a year to make one song, and then I just kind of cranked out 3 of them this year. I got another one coming out in a week on September 20th.
Yeah.
So it's like it's all good, and I know that on a podcast we're supposed to drink IPAs. I feel like, but I brought my martini glass, and I'm gonna kick things off with that. I hope that's okay.
You're okay, dude. I'm drinking iced tea. So
okay, all right, yeah. Well, one of us will stay sober.
What? Yeah. So I am I'm a teetotaler. I don't drink anymore. But no, I have a bad habit. I know I should. When I'm working at the shop and I get a little bored, I start scrolling through Instagram and I start looking for bands that really kind of like that catch me. And I'll be listening to the music, and I got to yours, and I was like, okay. And I was waiting for the vocals, and I went, oh no, this is instrumental.
Yeah.
And then I just kept listening. And then you had the music video with Godzilla, and I was like, it's done. I like these guys. And
great. Yeah.
I was like, I'm a huge Godzilla guy. I love Godzilla.
Okay. Yeah, and, it's awesome.
You caught me, and I'm like, all right, cool. I don't know. You can take this as it is. I feel your music has that power metal element. It's like a cross between like really epic, kind of like a Dragon Force, I'm trying to think of something like almost like the Viking metal type feel, but without the vocals, meets Two Steps from Hell. If you know who, yeah, and it has that.
No, I don't. I thought that was a like a metaphor. I don't know who that is.
Two Steps from Hell is very much. They do a lot of music for the very medieval movies, video games.
Okay,
very epic, very like. But it's. I feel that your music is taking that kind of epicness of being just the instrumental and putting it with the metal, and I like the way it works together. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, man.
So yeah. Later when you get down, take a look up Two Steps from Hell, and
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, literally, this is the best way to describe Two Steps from Hell. Where I used to work, my bosses came in and go, "What are you listening to? What kind of music is this?" I go, "This is music to slay dragons by." And
yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it's 100% like it's kind of like a soundtrack to that, right?
Yeah.
Because when I was younger, I always criticized 90s music, like alternative and grunge, right? Everybody hates me for it. But like you're out of your mind. Like that stuff was great. Like everybody loves Nirvana. Yeah, everybody loves Soundgarden. I'm like, look, that's great. I don't have to agree with you that it's I don't have to disagree with you that you enjoy it, but I didn't enjoy it, right? So I went from metal in like 91 that kind of crested with the Black Album, and then the 90s came along and kind of like converted everybody to a grunge band, like even Metallica, right? And I'm sure we could do like 7 or 8 podcasts just on that. But it was kind of a desert for people like me. So I had nowhere to turn. So I would listen to movie soundtracks, like the composition, like Hans Zimmer type stuff. Mark Isham has great. His soundtrack from Fire in the Sky is actually really cool. It's really intense, got a lot of weird noises. So I would kind of listen to that type of stuff. And then as the 90s were getting closer to ending, industrial came around. So I was listening to like Stabbing Westward. bands like that were like getting closer to metal, like a couple of Filter songs, and then metal, like maybe not in the way we all wanted, but it finally came back like with the new metal scene. And then Clayman for me like came out, and then that took me the rest of the way. But that's kind of a long-winded way of saying like listening to movie soundtracks was a really fun, cool experience for me.
Oh,
And I'm not like a lyric guy. I mean, it's funny to say because I make instrumental music, so like clearly I'm not. But I never really wanted to listen to the meaning of the words. I wasn't interested in the poetry of it, even if it was really good. It was just kind of lost on me. Um, so I've been told a lot that my music sounds like a video game soundtrack. And I'm like, yeah, because it's supposed to be like the setting for something like incredibly epic and incredibly intense. And I wanted to take people on that kind of a ride, right?
yeah. Well,
And oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh, this is I've explained this to us about another band. The music that you put together is music that I would totally use while I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
would be
yeah,
playing in the background because it doesn't have the lyrics. It's got the music, but you can play D&D and it fits. And yeah, definitely. If I would have found your music, say in like 1990 when I was heavy into Dungeons and Dragons,
hmm,
yeah, I would have recorded it onto a tape. And for those who don't know, tapes were these audio things that
yeah,
you had to record and hit it, and tape to tape. I would make mixtapes, and I would play them while we are playing Dungeons and Dragons. That your music would have definitely made that mixtape so that we could be and
yeah. No, I totally get it, man. What kind of stuff did you have on when you were playing D&D?
uh
Like Maiden and
Maiden, Zeppelin, King Crimson, um, uh, stuff like Sabotage, stuff like that. Stuff that
yeah,
had
it's fun stuff, man.
yep, yeah,
Fun times.
oh yeah,
Um, yeah, um, I have the cover of my single Wolf Cross is my two sons, and a guy from my band in New York, he's a graphic designer, so I was like, I'm going to take a picture of them, and I want you to put them in like crop them out. They're just going to be like on their stomachs, like listening to music, like I used to do when I was young. You know,
yeah,
my mom would bring home albums, like sweet 80s albums, right? And I would just listen to them in front of the stereo, like that was my recreation. And so I had my kids kind of make that same picture, and then my buddy put them in like a dystopian future, like penthouse apartment with the world like falling down around him. And I was like, this is like fantastic because it's like what's going on while they're listening to it, right? They're kind
mm-hmm.
of making up their own image to what's happening in the music. And maybe, a more traditional musical experience is you're listening to like a singer and you're listening to what that singer is trying to impart. Maybe there's some really clever poetry going on. Me, it's more about like completely just the emotional connection to the music.
Yeah,
And so it wasn't ever one of my songs, Skyscraper, is 4 minutes long, which I guess is technically kind of long, but I was never trying to make a Dream Theater song. Not that I'm of like Petrucci's caliber by any sense,
yeah,
but like I wasn't trying to make anything progressive that had different time signatures or key changes that weren't necessarily traditional because I wanted that ride of like draw you in with a hook, right? Like
yeah,
the tone of the guitar sounds real crisp. Um, and the hook is good. It's not like a mailed in radio rock kind of hook. And then let's go into a verse, let's go into a pre-chorus, let's go into a chorus, and let's bury everybody with as much soloing as we can. Like I don't think, I have 4 songs, 4 solos. Maybe my last one doesn't really have a solo, but you can never solo too much. And I really wanted it to be enjoyed like on that level, right?
yeah,
And I think it's good. Somebody said, Black Veil Brides is not my favorite band, but somebody said about them because people criticize them like no other because their singer's kind of ridiculous and they look like Motley Crue and all this other stuff. But somebody said, like, look, if you had one nice thing to say about them, it would be that they don't really have like a filler track. They don't really have like a B-side track. And I thought that was really interesting. It's like, yeah, what if a band, really did put in the effort to just not throw in like a piece of crap song
Yeah, yeah.
that's just there to make the album longer. And you do need some of that, but I don't think the song has to be bad. Like if you want to slow it down, you got to give some people some breathing space,
Yeah.
right, to make the album flow better. But I thought that was a really cool concept. And that was kind of what frustrated me about '90s music. I thought a lot of it was really lazy. The lyrics were kind of made up. Nirvana, Soundgarden admitted that their lyrics kind of they didn't mean anything. They just wrote them to fill it in. And then on the other end of the spectrum, it's like somebody trying really hard to put in a lot of effort to make something great. And I think it pays off, and I just kind of appreciate that kind of effort.
Yeah.
It's respectful to your audience.
Yeah. You're like me. I'm going to age myself. I am 50. I turned 50 this year. So I grew up on the 80s hair metal. I've gone through thrash metal. I've gone through all that. And when, grunge popped up, everybody's like, oh, this is the next big thing. I hated it. I still don't like it.
You and me both, man. I don't get it. Yeah.
I will go to my grave and I will say this I think that like Pearl Jam and Nirvana were the two most overrated bands. Well, two of the most overrated bands ever. And my buddy's like, somebody posted on Facebook years ago, and it was like, bands you think are overrated. And I put Nirvana, and somebody's, yeah. And my buddy back in the day goes, no, Paul still hates Nirvana to this day.
Oh, it's awful.
I don't get it. I don't like it. It's not me. My son, who's now 25, he likes them, but he also likes other music. He's a big Nine Inch Nails fan, which I like. We both like the band Clutch. We're big into other bands and synthwave and whatnot. And like you said,
no kidding, yeah.
I'm very much of the whole thing where I'm not gonna lie, I was gatekeeper-ish back in the day, and it took my wife looking at me, going, "Why are you being that way?" And I went, "I don't know. I don't know," because I had to be one of them guys. I had to listen to the hardest, like complex music.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then one day,
100%.
She's like, "Well, you still like hair music?" I'm like, yeah. And I was like, "Yeah, I still do, and I still like Skid Row. I still like my Motley Crue, stuff like that." And then she's like, "Well, why are you doing that?" And I went, "I don't know." And I don't. And then
I feel you, man. I think you got to stick to your guns. I think you're right on the money. Like my wife, it's funny, a friend of mine, he and I go on and on about music all the time. And he was like, for my birthday, I'm going to demand that my wife listen to me when I talk about music. Like she's going to have to listen to me and engage. And I was like, that's hilarious, man, because I can't go on and on like that at the house. But, you're talking about, I was talking about like, effort that goes into this, right? So, I don't want to call it talent, because whenever somebody picks up an instrument, they can't play it, and then they learn how to play it. They practice it. That's effort that turns it into that. So like you can say what you will about, like, let's take a really cheese ball like Cherry Pie, right, by Warrant.
Yep.
Okay, that exhibits not a whole lot of capability other than I think the singer's kind of real capabilities of singing. But that band is capable of doing some pretty challenging stuff.
Yeah, and the next album, they really pushed it. Dog Eat Dog is
right. And then like White Snake, Vandenberg had his own band going on, and it was kind of like a super group. And Coverdale's lyrics are cheesy, but at least like he isn't just making up random words to go together to trick his audience into thinking that it's poetic. I mean, I can't tell you how many people when I was growing up was like, Nirvana's like so deep, like it speaks to me. I'm like, he admitted that he's making it, that the lyrics don't mean anything.
Yep.
And clearly the music's not technical. The music's not necessarily, like, nothing on In Utero is really that listenable. I think the label wanted the album completely redone because they said it was unreleasable when the band put it out after they had recorded it.
Mm-hmm.
So, you can like, yeah, do I like to listen to Cinderella? Like, sure. Like, do I like to listen to Skid Row? Yeah, but Sebastian Bach is a tremendous
Oh, yeah.
vocalist.
Yeah.
And their lead guitarist is phenomenal. Um, and I think just because everyone started copying that doesn't necessarily mean that those people weren't talented and that their music was much more enjoyable than what turned out to be like a lot of people with like heroin addictions making like kind of crappy shitty music that came out of Seattle in the 90s that record labels just kind of like glued themselves to, right? They're like, we can sell 400,000 records in a week with this band. I don't care what it sounds like. Um, and I think when you know you have when you listen to music now, there's a lot of nostalgia for 80s stuff, 70s stuff, and the 90s stuff kind of gets passed by. Like I don't there's not a whole lot of people, even though they wear Nirvana t-shirts, and there's not a whole lot of people that want to throw on like Come As You Are and just kind of chill out and jam out to that song. And um I don't feel the same way about Here I Go Again by Whitesnake. I mean, it's a great tune. I don't care how lame it
No,
turned out to be or the memory of it is. It's those are great musicians that came together to make that song.
oh yeah.
And yeah, I mean, like I don't know if you listen to this podcast, but there's a podcast called Your Favorite Band Sucks. You got to check it out.
I'll have to look it up.
Oh yeah, they're great. They no one is spared. No one is spared. It's like they do Nirvana, Eminem. They got a 4-part series just on Eminem. They have, I mean, I think they put the Beatles in there, Led Zeppelin. So like no one gets spared. But I talk about that about the 90s and the grunge era is really it was really kind of a total dead zone for me. And unfortunately, I haven't listened to Slipknot since I was probably like 19 or 20. Like it took that to get me out of there, right? It was like, it was like Batman, right? He's not the hero we need, but but
It's
Corey
not the hero you
and the
wanted,
other
it's the hero you need. Yeah.
yeah, like Corey and the other guys, hitting a kettle drum with a baseball bat are the heroes that we deserve to drag us out of this.
And it was because I remember in the 90s when, but the thing is, ironically enough, when grunge hit, metal kind of got pushed aside, but there were some of the best albums ever from metal bands came out at that time period. I mean, the 3 Megadeth albums with Dave, Nick, and Marty, those were phenomenal. You had Pantera, going from a hair band to being Pantera.
Yeah,
White
yeah.
Zombie
I
coming out of
know.
nowhere,
Yeah, the Pantera thing is a great example. And yeah, because Cowboys from Hell was 1990 or 91. It was
90.
I mean, what an like yeah, it was either one of the two. It's like what an awesome debut album. Like holy shit. And I know that it's not technically their debut album, but
it's that's a whole different band from power metal to yeah.
And they really
the same band. It's
yeah, and they really found their stride with that. They were like, this actually is what's working for us. Like we tried to be a band and do what was popular in the 80s. And just like a lot of like Kirk Hammett, Daryl Abbott was inspired by Ace Frehley, right? A lot of those 80s dudes were influenced by him. I'm not a Kiss fan, but they gave it a shot doing what everybody else was doing. They're very capable musicians. But then, yeah, it's amazing that they found their stride like that because there's really nobody else like them, And I know Phil's had his problems, but that arc of Pantera between Cowboys from Hell and Reinventing the Steel, like including all those, is just like it's fantastic. And you're right, that kind of got lost because Alice in Chains and Nirvana and Soundgarden or Pearl Jam were just like too big to push out of the way. Yeah, and I hear a lot that Alice in Chains is a metal band, but I'm not agreeing with that one. I like
Okay.
them a lot, actually, but I'm not. I don't think they're a metal band.
I think the first album is a metal album. Same way with Soundgarden. Their first albums were metal. Then when grunge hit, they switched to more of a grungy
Okay, yeah.
sound, and then they kind of ignored those first two albums for both of them. So that's where I stand on them. But
Was Alice in Chains' their first album wasn't Facelift, right? It was something else,
I think so.
or was that their first one?
I know. I'm gonna have to look this up real quick.
Yeah, check the Google machine.
Google.
Yeah.
If you ever, that's like trying to explain to kids that come in my shop what you had to do before Google. You had to hope for the best that somebody tells you how you ended up with, or liner notes. Uh,
Yeah, to get yeah, you just had to kind of hope that somebody, it's like figuring out video games. Like some kid in your neighborhood had to figure that out, or nobody was getting past that point.
no, or I remember when the internet kind of first started, but you had to go buy your magazines that had your walkthroughs and uh, okay, they started in '87. Discography. There we go. And Facelift is their first one. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
Yep.
I had that tape.
Yep. I think I still got the tape. Um,
Good for you.
yeah, I'm one of them that's literally I'm a physical media guy. Got to have physical media. I got vinyl, cassettes, CDs. I even have mini CDs. The
Really?
yeah,
What about, you got any laser disc back there?
I do have Laserdisc back here.
Nice.
Hold on a second. I
I
have
I saw Willow on Laserdisc at my uncle's place. It was the best thing ever.
I have two Laserdisc players. I got about 200 Laserdiscs, and I
Oh
even
my
have some of
God. That's great.
the what is it the SpectraVision CEDs. Do you remember those?
No, no.
They were roughly the size of a Laserdisc, but it comes in a cartless cartridge you stick in a machine. The and it looks like a record, plays like a record. Would come out, it would play, had a needle in the whole 9 yards. The movie'd come up. Then when you're done, it would slide it back into the case and you'd put it aside. So
Oh, that is high tech. I
yeah,
like
and
that.
high tech, and it was around the time when Beta and VHS first started taking off, and I've totally got a couple floating around here. I'd have to go grab them here in a minute,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, but I'm a physical media. Love I still have my VHS tapes, a bunch of them, my Laserdisc, my DVDs, my Blu-rays. I've even got 8mm and films and all kinds of fun stuff because I will not let it die.
That's good for you, man. Yeah, I bought I had like a two monitor setup for my desk, and they were just two kind of, run of the mill HP monitors. And then I got the nice like big 32-inch one. So I put the two extra ones in my basement, and I hooked up my N64. I hooked up a Super Nintendo. I got one of those ridiculous 20,000 games in one HDMI chip to put in the back of one of them for my sons.
Yeah.
And I can't get them out of there now. It's different. Like when I was growing up, anything that was kind of earlier than Nintendo was a little hard to play. But the kids now, they have all this great like vintage stuff that they actually really do like to play. And they can listen to, like, I'll play them 80s rock and metal, and they do enjoy it because I think after a certain point, the production quality just changed, right? So I think like in the early 80s, the production quality kind of became the modern sound where it's like much more clear, much more crisp. And then there was so many, the electric guitar, it just sounded so much. Sorry, we're like jumping all over the place. We're switching from N64 to this, but I guess it is a music podcast. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of jealous of them because when I was a kid in the 80s, anything older than like 81 just sounded ancient, right? And now though my kids can dial the clock back 40 years and it still sounds pretty good.
Oh yeah. It's funny because I hear lyrics so much better now and riffs and stuff like that because I'm used to cassette tapes and stuff like that. Now you got even you got a nice stereo. You can put in a cassette and you're really hearing it. And now we got streaming, which I think kind of backtracks a little bit because it takes and compresses the quality down. So when you go back to CDs, which I love CDs and I love my vinyl, and you put it on, and you're like, huh, I don't remember him saying that originally. You look it up, that's always been the lyric, but it's so hard to hear early on.
Oh, really?
And
Yeah,
now,
that's
yeah,
fascinating.
and now the
Yeah.
quality is pristine, and you're like, oh, okay, wow, okay, all right, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I hadn't really appreciated that about streaming, that it is it's like it's coming through like based on your bandwidth and all that other stuff.
Mhm.
Um yeah, and like uh I needed a lot of help to get my stuff on Spotify because the first song that I recorded, Wolf Cross, that's all live guitars, and the Tower is live guitars as well. And I was using a mixing engineer local, so I'm in Philly now. And then I found another mixing engineer who was specific to metal, and he wanted only like the direct signal. So you plug your guitar into your audio interface, um, and then it records just the electric signal that's coming from your guitar. So if you send it to be mixed, the guy can do way more, right?
Mhm.
So you can say, look, I don't really like the delay on that part. Can you just go crazy? Just put some crazy delay effect on there, and you don't have to re-record it, because when you record it live, it sounds a little different. Um, but I didn't feel like it sounded any worse using the direct in signal, the DI signal, and it was easier for me to manipulate it in kind of like post production and then get it online. But yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that I've looked into printing stuff on vinyl, printing stuff on cassettes, but it's just like so completely not cost effective that I could do one for like myself and put it in a time capsule for my kids. Um, but the internet's forever. So, to spend whatever that would cost. It is unfortunate. But I mean, there's bands that still release stuff. Like Beartooth released, I think, a recent album. They even put out cassettes.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
was like, yeah, just cuz, like, whatever, because cassettes are awesome. Like, we're
yeah.
gonna put them out on cassette.
I have I have brand new vinyl up here of bands, brand new albums,
Really?
fresh off the thing. Yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah, but I've also got like remastered versions of stuff. Like I had to go pick up the Garage Days, vinyl, because they cleaned it up so it doesn't sound as rough as it did when I was young. And I was like, oh okay.
Yeah, that's the covers, right?
Yeah,
Like
that's
they
the cover
had,
album. Yeah,
it's
that's
an
when they
EP.
basically,
Yeah.
yeah,
Thin
the
Lizzy.
yeah, they brought in Jason to basically put him on that, see how they could do before they did Injustice. So yeah,
Oh, really? Okay, so that's why they did Garage Days.
rumor, but I'm
Okay.
guessing that's probably why. When you bring the new guy in, you throw him on. You don't want to throw him, directly into something, test him, see what
Yeah.
he can do, and then go from there. Yeah,
And then they put him on Injustice, and
and then
Lars turns the vase all the way down,
yep.
which is so appalling. Like, I add bass, sometimes my mixing engineer will add it, because if I have the drums are programmed, right? And I don't know if I should like admit this, but the drums are programmed. I'm only one guy. Um, but I've hired that out using uh like freelance people, and they're amazing.
Yeah,
So I've kind of got like this team of people that help me put all this together. And the bass, I appreciate it so much more, because when you're running through, obviously, like, you want to put down the drums, and then you play or maybe you start with a riff, like, so you're just like noodling around in your room, in your house, and you come up with a riff, and then you figure out what key it's in, and you turn that into a verse, and you turn it into a chorus, and then you lead over it. You put that down, you put the drums down, and then once you add the bass, like, it's so much better. Like, it's the song has like a soul at
yep.
that point. It's so important, and it just makes it sound great. Like, whatever you're listening to it on in your car, your stereo monitors. I love listening to stuff through my stereo monitors, because it's totally clean, super. high density, uncondensed stuff coming out of your studio monitors. There's really no sound like it to the average person who's only listening to MP3s
Mm-hmm.
or streaming. But yeah, to eliminate the bass is just to improve the drums. And it's like, but the bass and the drums, they go hand in hand. That's the rhythm section. There's nothing there, there's no advantage. Make the snare louder. Fine, no one cares. Like the snare is super loud on a bunch of stuff. That's not a big deal. But to drop out the bass is yeah, and that's what Bob Rock said about that album, because they asked him to produce the Black Album, and he's like, I knew about him, and I knew that the And Justice had like no low end, and it wasn't very well produced, and and thank God he did, because say what you will about the songs on the Black Album, but it's a really good sounding album. Yeah, and I was super into Metallica until like the 90s, because I didn't think Load like wasn't really my style. And by the time they got back into it with Death Magnetic, it was kind of too late. I kind of moved on. That was like 2008, something like that.
Yeah. See, I was one of the ones where I kind of dropped out on Metallica after the Black Album. I came back for Garage Inc. because that's the double cover album. I love that to this day. I still love that. Load and Reload. This is where I stand on this. Irritates some people. I think if you took the good songs off of Load and the good songs off of Reload, you'd have one phenomenal album instead of two mediocre albums.
Okay. Yeah.
But I'm also the same one with Guns N' Roses, Use Your Illusion. I think if you'd have taken those two albums and made one, they could have had another Appetite for Destruction. If they would have taken a good album and made one really good album, maybe just release that as like B-sides or like, Lies, what they did with that.
Yeah.
I think they definitely would have had another album as big as Appetite if they would have taken Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 and made just one phenomenal album.
Yeah.
Maybe some B-sides. Same way with Metallica. Load and Reload would have been one, maybe not Master of Puppets, but it would have definitely been another Black Album.
Yeah, I mean, Load, I remember Until It Sleeps. I really liked that tune. Mm-hmm. I don't really remember much else on it, because I think it was 94 and the Black Album was 91. It's funny because it took them so long to record another album, because they toured for 2 years mm-hmm. making on the Black Album. That's so wild. I mean, but what an awesome time to be a member of that band, though. And what I think is cool, and this is kind of ties into my philosophy a little bit, is I saw them a couple of years ago, and what I think is cool is they play to an audience that is like a Master of Puppets audience, or it's an audience that's like a Load and Reload audience, or it's an audience that is like, I'm forgetting some of their albums, but like the Death Magnetic, Saint Anger, and after that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And they got a lot of fans, a lot of different fans with the Black Album. So fans who want to hear like Enter Sandman and those classics, and they get these people all together, like these diehards who are like, nothing after Injustice for All is any good. It's all shit. Like that, I'm not listening to that. And they play stuff from Kill 'Em All at that concert. They play stuff off of Ride the Lightning. They encored with Master of Puppets, and they poked fun at Saint Anger. Like they played a song from Saint Anger, which I actually thought was pretty good. It was called Dirty Window. And they would play one. They would play some Black Album stuff, and everybody was into all of it. And I think it's a unique story where you can access this music, like metal, like real metal, like Master of Puppets, if you just get it, if you just get it to these people in a certain delivery vector, right? Yeah. And that delivery vector was the Black Album. It's like, here's a bunch of 3.5-minute songs they're really good, really well produced, really, really great tunes. and then here's our back album. And that's exactly how I got into their music. Was I didn't know who they were. I just knew there was Metallica and Megadeth. Like, that's all I knew. I was 9 years old. Those were the two bands. And I was like, well, I'm just going to listen to like Metallica. And then I heard the Black Album, like a lot of people got into their back catalog from there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I bought all their tapes, their first four, and then a kid in my neighborhood kept stealing them from me. Like, I'd finally have the whole collection, and then this guy would come over to our house. Like, they would, like, one would be gone, and another would be gone. But yeah, I mean, with the music that I play, I want it to be, it's like clearly me, right? It's music
Mm-hmm.
that I want to hear, but I want other people to get at it. Like, I want people to know, like, this is how it sounds, like, in isolation. And prior to, I couldn't name a year, but music for the longest time never had vocals. Classical music doesn't have a vocalist.
No.
It's okay to just listen to the instruments. And that was part of my, motivation. Was I want people to be able to hear it and enjoy it, because I think just not a lot of people do. I don't think they get at it very easily.
Yeah. It's, and you're right. There's not, at a certain point, they're like, oh, hey, we can sing over this. And they start putting vocals to stuff. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't need, I mean, literally go back to Metallica and you have Orion, no vocals.
Yeah, yeah,
You have,
yeah.
Anesthesia, pulling teeth, no vocals. You have, geez, I'm trying to remember. There's a couple Megadeth songs that have no vocals. And especially when you get into like the big power metal bands or even the thrash metal bands, they wanted to show off their technique and their guitar playing and their drumming and stuff like that. And which I always thought was cool about Metallica was they had essentially a bass solo, which you didn't get in a lot of stuff. And then Primus
Yeah.
came around, you got all bass, and literally I picked up a bass because of two people, Lemmy from Motorhead and Frankie from Anthrax. And then I just, because I knew that as much as I liked Cliff, there was no way that I could ever play that. So it was like,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Do the other guys play with a pick? Does Lemmy play with a pick?
yeah, he strummed. He was like, no, 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 no. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And
Yeah, and Orion, that's I think that was supposed to be two songs and they combined it into one. Or it was supposed to be a song with vocals and they left it as an instrumental. But like the bass transition when it gets into that chill part is
yep.
just like is so great. And it's like there's nothing that can be added to that would improve it. And I don't want to criticize any vocal style, but also just speaking musically, right? So if you have just uncleans throughout a song, those aren't notes, right? So necessarily. So it isn't adding melody to it or a layer of melody to it. So I mean, I like a bunch of that stuff. Like, don't get me wrong. But there's an argument to be made that musically it's not really losing much because you're not taking away a melody line, right? So if you take away a melody line from one of my songs, like then you're just left with kind of rhythm guitar, and people are like, well, what the hell is, like, somebody might like it. I'm sure there's somebody out there who'd think that was fantastic, right? But Nirvana has lots of fans too, so that's not really that doesn't really matter. But if you take away a vocal that is, take away the verse vocals from any metalcore song, like take like an As I Lay Dying. You're not taking away any notes. Now the chorus, like they're singing, that's a different story. But musically, it can do without it. But some of that music, you need it for the intensity. Like I don't know what As I Lay Dying would be without their vocalists. Like I know the guys had some problems, but just to use that as an example, the intensity of that is kind of irreplaceable. And I think like Killswitch and Gage, they're very melodic in their approach, and that you would lose a lot there, even though their instruments are very technical and very melodic.
Yeah.
And just a sidebar on Kill Switch is that when you listen to their recordings, their studio albums, there's like very little extra production on there. Like it really is just
Mhm.
the dudes in the band. Like if it would physically work this way, you could just put a mic in that room and let them play their songs from start to finish. Um, it is kind of neat to hear that, and there's not a lot of metal that's like that. Um, that's something interesting about them. But and my drummer from Super Thrust went to college with their singer, which was interesting.
Which one?
Yeah.
Which one? Which
Jesse.
Jesse?
Yeah, Jesse Leach. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen Kill Switch twice. I saw him with Howard, and I saw him with yeah. So
Oh, which one did you prefer? If you have to pick a team.
I'm almost going to say it's like two different bands. So it's really hard to tell.
That's
Uh,
true. That's true, man. Like
yeah,
Howard's approach is very different.
yeah, it's vastly different. It's see, it goes back to the whole Van Halen versus Van Hagar. It's two
Yeah, yeah,
bands.
yeah. Yeah.
It's I know it's still Van Halen, but at a certain point, I call it Van Hagar because it's a different band. Different sound,
Yeah.
different everything is completely different from 1984 to 5150. It's so different, and that's I
Yeah, and Van Halen, yeah, I want to ask you about the Linkin Park situation as well. But Van Halen, I never listened to them when I was growing up. We just had a really kind of tight neighborhood, like a classic '80s neighborhood, where everyone was riding bikes to each other's house. Everyone was really close, physically close together, all boys, just randomly, and it was all like Metallica and Megadeth, that neighborhood. So Van Halen just never entered the mix, and back then your exposure was really only so so broad, right? I tell my kids like you don't understand, like we didn't have a lot of like you just listened to what the record companies decided that you were going to
mhm.
listen to.
Oh yeah,
It was really annoying, like you'd go. I went a whole summer hearing nothing but Black Hole Sun, and I was like, I can't believe this song is popular. Like this doesn't
yeah,
make any sense. Um, but listening to Van Halen now, I can't believe the stuff he was doing in the 70s. Because I would be like, that song must have been recorded in the 90s and it was recorded like 20 years earlier. Um, his sound is just really, I don't want to say it was ahead of its time because he effectively established like the distortion approach but his lead guitar, um, I'm consistently shocked that he was playing like that before 1980. Like it really is weird that that he was doing that in a good way.
oh yeah.
And then like I was we can hit a modern hot topic. Linkin Park's new singer, the Emily, I forget her last name. Um, I'm kind of like I was a huge Linkin Park fan, but I was like 20, 21 at the time. And I think um Hybrid Theory is a really, really great album. I just don't know that I would care that much that they have like a lead singer controversy right now. It's just like maybe just let them. I think they chose a person who sounds kind of like Chester Bennington when she screams, and she's a little bit of a novelty act. But I heard people saying like, "Oh, you missed the boat not hiring the Sum 41 guy," and I'm like, "But the Sum 41 guy was like, come on, like is that the bar that we're setting here? Like,
Yeah, that's not the bar I would have set.
it's like
Yeah,
this is like he's like a Z level Alien Ant Farm type guy." I was like, this. I don't even know what hit they had, but it was one, and it was like in 2001, and then they were gone.
yeah,
And I'm like, just so I'm glad that they're touring again. I probably won't go see him because I'm just not really into that music anymore. But um, I think they made an okay choice. I don't think it's something that's so terrible that it needs to be demolished on social media. But I think certain music for me has its time and place, and like the Slipknot and the Limp Bizkit, I'm sorry, the Linkin Park. Um, it's something that I was into when I was younger, but I can't really get back there mentally or with my taste now.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I went through a phase where I was, oh, it had to be hard, hard. It was death metal or like black metal. It was that level because I was going through an angry phase. I was in my early 30s at the time, and I was just grumpy at everything. So I was like, that's what I wanted to hear. And then now that I've gotten older, I've backtracked. I've gotten into stuff. Now I can literally listen. My one buddy calls my musical taste schizophrenic,
Hmm.
and because when I edit, when I work on my other stuff, I listen to records for the most part. Because a buddy of mine told me, he goes, hey, he goes, he's a comic book artist. He goes, listen to vinyl. He goes, because you got to get up and flip the album so you don't lose track of time, which you can when you're listening to streaming, because it just continues and continues and continues.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
can lose track of time, and it also gets it so you don't get like blood clots because you're getting up and moving around. You got to go get up and flip the album over, or even if I listen to like a mini CD or a cassette, I still got to get over, eject it, flip it over, or put a new tape in, and it keeps you're flowing and stuff like that. But I'll listen to everything from I'm big in musical soundtracks for musical scores and just soundtracks, especially like Quentin
yeah,
Tarantino stuff. Um, and then I'll listen to everything from Motley Crue to Maiden to stoner metal to Pantera to Clutch to synthwave to Carpenter Brute and all this stuff like that. And then he's like, I was like, dude, I listen to everything now. I've gotten away from being like I said, being the gatekeeper, being a grumpy old man that I was.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And it does. And the worst part about it is now that I've gotten older, I'm very open to new music. And I'm going the other way that most old people get. We're like, no, my music's the best music, and that's just it. Now I'm like, okay, I dig this music. That music sucks. This music is
yeah,
good. This music's good. I like the hook. That's got a good beat. Blah blah blah. And I've found a lot of new bands that I really like, and then I found bands that I'm just like, yeah, I don't know how they're famous and I don't know how they're popular because it's not good. And
yeah, yeah. And yeah, I hear you. Like what do they say? It's like once you turn like 35 or something, you don't listen to anything new anymore. And that was kind of true of maybe my parents, but I listen to a lot of new stuff. I am a metalcore fan. So like Ghost Inside has a new album. That's pretty good. There's a lot of good tracks on that. But then there's kind of this new approach to metal where all the solos have been replaced by these ridiculous low-tuned breakdowns that are in like this very slow BPM range. That I'm not really into. Like I get that you want it to be like as heavy as possible, right? That's cool if that's the angle. But I've been at shows where the song's going great. And like, I used to be in the mosh pit when I was 18, 19, or 16 to like 20. And then they'd hit that breakdown and like everything would just stop. And I was like, I don't know why this was necessary. Like, is this like, are we taking like a bathroom break? Is this like a beer break part of the song? So I don't like interrupting it that way. Like a couple of my songs have it's not even a slowed down part. Like the beats per minute stay the same, but it's like a clean part, right? So you throw in like a bar that's clean, and then the next bar will be clean plus drums, and then the next bar will be clean drums and then melody line, and then we're gonna go right back into like the song's original kind of pace and feel. Um, it can't be a million miles an hour, like the entire way through. You've got to make it kind of a journey for the listener. But
yeah,
the breakdown stuff, I'm not. I know a lot of metal guys, like Nick Nocturnal's a huge blogger, Canadian guy, really into metal. and he's just like Mr. Breakdown. I'm like, I just don't get it. Like I wish I could get into this, but I'm not. I just don't feel it. And Lorna Shore, right? Lorna Shore is like that. I think they're from Jersey. I think their singer is like incredibly gifted. I think what that guy can do with his voice is totally wild. But the breakdown stuff, I think they almost do it just as like a gag at some points because it's so slow. Like I actually set my metronome to one of their breakdowns and it wouldn't go low enough to hit their quarter notes that they were doing. Like it was slower than the slowest setting on my metronome. And I was like, these guys they're just like messing with us. Like at this
Yeah.
point, they're like, this is going to be the hardest, slowest, like most ridiculous break. And I'm like, you know what? Good. That's like fine. But that's where I'm like the old man yelling at clouds. I'm like, where's solo? Like this song, that's where the solo is supposed to be.
Yeah.
But I'm just really happy that metal has kind of come back around because there was a period where solos were like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Like I heard a rumor that Slipknot's label wouldn't let them do solos. I don't know if they wanted to, but there was like a period of time where that was just not cool.
Yeah.
And I think that was a real shame, and I think it's great that you can kind of tell when music is of the right quality, right? Because the trendiness phases come and go, and then that sort of stays the same.
Yeah. It is the whole solo thing. And I knew that. You're just like, something's missing. Then you realize, why would you take solos out? Those were fun. Especially like I said, I was a thrash guy, and you'd get those dual guitars, man. They'd play solos back and forth, especially like Exodus. They did the back and forth solos, and that was huge back in the day. And you're like, that was so much fun. It kept the music like fast paced, kept it going. And yeah, I like my doomy gloom, slowed down sludgy metal too, and my stoner metal and whatnot. But
so do you like the breakdowns? Are you a breakdown guy?
depends on the song.
Okay.
There's some that fit and there's some that just do not fit. And I think when it fits, it's fine. When it feels like it's almost just placed in there for like just time, like to extend the song out, you can almost
to get to 3.5 minutes.
Yeah, we're like, dude, we're at a minute 40. We need to slow it. All right, I got you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I hear you. Yeah, I sometimes I forget that some of this stuff is subjective, right?
Yeah.
And because I'm extremely opinionated. But I hear you, and I do actually appreciate that. I think Lorna Shore is having like almost a competition with themselves, and I think that's actually pretty entertaining. I think that's actually pretty funny. I think that makes them kind of like a chill group of guys that's actually having a lot of fun.
Yeah. See, that's another thing. If you can tell the band's having fun and enjoying what they do, like we made fun of it. The bands that get up and just play and stare at their shoes, they never move. I say that, but literally one of my favorite bands is Clutch, and their guitar player and bass player just stand there. Neil gets up and moves around. He's all over doing his whole thing, and but they also, you could go see them on a Monday and then see them on a Tuesday, and it's a completely different set and a completely different show. They change their lineup almost constantly. And matter of fact, I'm going to go see them Sunday again with Rival Sons, Fu Manchu, and I don't remember the fourth band.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Never seen Fu Manchu. Been wanting to see them for years. My youngest son is now into Fu Manchu somehow, and it wasn't from me. He finds music, and he's like, I want to go see Fu Manchu. And I'm like, wow, that's awesome, bud, because I got you tickets.
Yeah, that's great. I haven't heard that name in a long time. That's fantastic.
It's it's so much fun because I have 4 boys ranging from 32 to 14, and all my kids love music. My oldest is he likes it, but he's not really into it. My 25-year-old, huge music nut, and I'll give him shit till the day I die because he likes Nirvana, and I make fun of him
Yeah.
almost every day because of that. And
Did you not
that's
get to them early? Because I've gotten to my kids really early on grunge.
I don't even know
I've
how he.
totally poisoned them.
I don't even know how they found it because it's
Yeah.
not like it's not here. It's not my house.
You got
It's
to get
like
out in front of it. Yeah,
yeah, you're
because
like you feel like it's like did you talk to some kid in an alley? Did they
it's
turn you on to Nirvana? Damn it.
like the say no to drugs
Yeah, say
ads
no
when
to.
we were a kid. It's like some guy behind the gym opens up a trench coat, and instead of a bunch of heroin balloons, he's got Nirvana
Yeah,
cassettes.
and Nirvana,
I don't know what's worse.
Nevermind, and Saint Anger. I've had so many people like when Nevermind came out. My one of my good friends and my girlfriend at the time both bought me the cassette, and I'm like, okay. And it sat in my truck forever till I probably sold them at back when you still could sell cassette tape for like good money. Then years later, it became Saint Anger. Everybody kept buying me Saint Anger, and I'm like, are you doing this on purpose? Are you being mean?
Yeah.
And every time somebody buys me one, because I got one as of a couple years ago, because I had a friend buy me some the remastered Metallica on CD, and he got me the first three, and then Saint Anger, and I was like, you know what? I haven't listened
That's
to this,
nice.
and I put it back in the CD player, and I'm like, yeah, I still don't like this.
The Saint Anger.
Yeah, Saint Anger. I have literally in my car are the other three CDs. So it's Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, and Master Puppets is always in my car. So
Yeah, you can always listen. I hear you. You can always listen to those.
mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, and it's funny. I not to go down the Metallica rabbit hole, but Met- Master of Puppets and Ride the Lightning, those are just like interchangeable. For sometimes it's Master of Puppets is at the top, and then Ride the Lightning rotates over.
I I
Um,
I got into this discussion with Hawk once because I have a huge soft spot for Ride the Lightning because that's the first Metallica cassette I ever owned. I bought that and Megadeth's Peace Cells at the same time, and that's when I fell in love with thrash metal. And then I went and picked up Master Puppets and Kill 'Em All. Then I picked up So Far So Good So What and Killing's My Business. And then I discovered Anthrax, and then that continued that whole thing. Slayer, and then I continued getting into the. But it was all because of those two albums, so I have a huge soft spot. As much as I think Master Puppets is it flows better, I think, and it has, it's a little more uh, complex, a little more stylishly complex, I guess. Um, I will still be like, man, but Trapped Under Ice and Ride the Lightning are such good songs.
yeah, yeah, it's weird. I have the same feeling. It kind of tricks you a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Because one, you're thinking one is clearly the better of the two, and then it kind of flips.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and what I watched an interview with Kirk, and he said, the Kill 'Em All, they had such a small budget that the production of that album was really clipped. And he's like, there's bad notes like all over that album. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, the fact that you would lay down like the wrong note and just print it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he was like, we only had so many studio hours, so they were just like rushing us through every song. Like, no, that's it, that's done. Like that's a wrap. We're on to the next song. Um, I find all that stuff fascinating. And then I think he mentioned that by that time with Ride the Lightning, I think they recorded that overseas in Lars's homeland, and they
Mm-hmm.
they had kind of like all the time in the world, and really put a lot of work into it. Um, and that and Master of Puppets, like, it really shows. Like there's a ton of effort in those two albums. There
Yeah.
isn't any filler crap,
Nope.
And I really appreciate when bands really take the time to do that, which is why I get so offended by Nirvana, because I think Nirvana almost makes fun of music by trying as little as they can, by making up lyrics that make no sense, repeating the same word for the last 35 seconds of a song and giving everyone the impression that that was intentional and poetic. Um, and then there's all these other bands that like never get a shot, right? And they're working so hard and they're doing it so much better. And it isn't even, that's why I don't like to use the word talent. I mean, these people are trying harder, right? They're putting in the work and their product is probably better. And you're never going to know.
Well, we had this discussion, I want to say either Friday or Saturday at the shop, that there are so many bands that were just great. One album, maybe went on tour, disappeared into obscurity. You go back and like I can tell you the band. There's a band called Mount Salem, and the best way I can explain this band is it's what would happen if Black Sabbath was fronted by a woman. And I love this band. Seen them on tour. They were great. Met them. I love their album. Gone. Nowhere. There was a band in the 90s, maybe late 80s, early 90s called Dead On. One album. I love that album. Gone. And you're just like, but then there's bands that you just keep putting out like half-ass shitty album, half-ass. Then every once in a while you get a complete and total banger, and then the next album will be again just like a filler album, like we got to fulfill a contract, so we're just gonna put this album out, and you're just like
greatest hits. After having like 16 songs, you put out your greatest hits album.
Oh yeah. I grew up in the day. I listened to Rush. I still like a lot of Rush, but I give people crap is that I got to see Rush one tour. I got to see them on the Roll the Bones tour, which is arguably not a good album. And but it was a great live show because they did all their big songs.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, they didn't just stick you with the new album stuff.
Yeah, they're not like, well, here's one, and then you're like, ugh. See, that was one that always threw me about going to see Metallica. I was like, man, I don't know if I want to see Metallica. And everybody's like, why? I was like, I don't like any of their new stuff. And they're like,
yeah,
no, they play old
stuff. I couldn't get some of my good friends to go with me a couple of years ago. They're like, aren't they just going to play, like their newer stuff? I'm like, I don't really think so anymore, man. Like, no. I mean, Load is like a 20-year-old album, for Christ's sake. So I don't think they're like trying to market their newer stuff. And 72 Seasons, I think, they didn't really owe their fans anything. They could have easily just not made that. So whatever they want to put out now, like I don't really hold it against them. It's whatever you want to do.
Yeah, it's like Guns N' Roses. Everybody's like, oh, they're gonna put out a new album. Why?
Yeah, dude, yeah, and like
the
Dee Snider said that about Twisted Sister years ago. He's like, people ask, like you're just playing your old stuff. He's like, yeah, nobody wants to hear us like come out with like a modern sound. Like they want to hear like 3 of our songs, and they don't want to hear they want to hear our attempt at like post grunge, type rock music. That's not what our fans are into. They give the people what they want.
Yeah, we say that, but I've seen Dee Snider on his solo tour a couple years ago, and although his new album is really good, or his new album, it was a couple years old now, but he still got up there. He played his new stuff, and then he played all of his big ones, with because this is literally the tour I saw. It was Warrant, Dokken, and Dee Snider.
That's great.
Warrant
I'd love to see Dokken.
Dokken, I got a little scared, not gonna lie. He came out and that first song was a little rough. He's just out there like, and I'm like, oh, he's gonna just phone it in. He don't want to be here. And then he saw the crowd getting into it. And more the crowd got into it, the more he got into it. So he's really just belting them out by the end. He's telling stories between songs, and
it's great.
And I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
Didn't play anything new, same way with the Warrant guys. Even though they've got new albums out, I think they played one new song. And most people call
Yeah.
that the piss break song because they're like, we're gonna play something off the new
Yeah.
album, bathroom time. Gets up and walks out.
Yeah, yeah.
And they did. They were fun. And there's the nostalgia the acts that I would go see. I don't care if I ever hear a new song from Dokken. I don't care if I hear a new song off of if I go see AC/DC. I don't know if I want to hear anything off of Black Ice. I want to hear back to even though Black Ice is 30 years old. But even was it Angus was one. He goes, well, how does it feel to put out 15 albums that sound alike? He goes, hey, that's 18 albums that sound alike, or whatever. And that's what it is. And
Good for him. Well, I mean, they are a band. You can only venture so far outside of your sound.
Oh yeah. And
you know, and
then when you do, people give you shit.
People don't like it. Yeah, they get really pissed off.
Mm-hmm.
And you're doing it to become more popular. I think In Flames clearly did that. Or if you're doing it to venture outside and do something a little more creative.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you have the right to do whatever you want. I mean, I think Slipknot came out with their album a couple of years ago, and Corey Taylor was like, told his fans, it's like, why don't you just shut up and listen to what we give you? I'm like, that's actually, he probably did that to provide like a soundbite, but that's good advice. It's like, you know what, like we're making the music, like you're gonna listen to
it. That's like I'm okay because they just released the Black Sabbath Tony Martin era box set. And no one gives Tony Martin era Black Sabbath even a chance. It's either Ozzy or Dio. I was like, there's a lot of really good Black Sabbath albums out there that don't have Ozzy or Dio on them. And people are like, what? No, listen to them. They're like, those are pretty good. I'm like, that's what I told you. It's a different band essentially,
it.
but because really the only person from the beginning to end of Black Sabbath is Tony Iommi. He's the only one when April. Same with like Deep Purple and stuff. But I'm one of the people that's like literally, okay. People ask me what's my favorite Iron Maiden album, and it's Power Slave. Always has been, always will be. It's not Killers. It's not, Number of the Beast. It's not this. I was like, literally, my three favorite albums are the one, boom, boom, boom. It's Power Slave, Strangers, and Seventh Son. So those are my three, and then I go back to the other ones. And people are like, "Oh, you're just doing that to be contrary," and I'm like, "No, it's the ones I like. I don't." It's
Yeah, right. Yeah,
but
no, I hear you.
Oh yeah, but all right. So I got to do this though. We're getting towards the end of the episode, but we're going to ask some things about you. We got the questions about the whole thing.
Okay.
I always love asking because you said it was offensive, but you can say it. We're towards the end here. What was the name of your first band?
Well, no, the name of my first band was Super Thrust.
Oh,
and we wanted it to sound somewhat like sexually overt, to be kind of like that 70s kind of rock sound.
Yeah.
And my lead singer, who was extremely clever, really funny person, he took the name, he was repairing like an AC unit with his father in somebody's attic, and that was the name of the AC unit. And he took a picture of it and sent it to all of us. And I was like, that's the name. Like, because we weren't trying to take ourselves too seriously. The drummer, he hated it. He wanted to be, I think one of the names he threw out was Through the Never. And I was like, I don't think we're like a Metallica kind of cover band here, man. We were doing like Stones covers, and we had several like pretty good originals. But yeah, so Super Thrust with a capital S, capital T was the name of my first band.
See, that's a good one. It's always I've had some really good ones for the first, and they're like, oh, these are going to suck, and then they give you like the best name ever, and you're like, that's a great name. I mean, mine was because Terminator 2 had just came out, and we were called No Fate. So
I love it. That's great.
And we were I mocked up I was the bass player and wrote all the lyrics, and I didn't know how to write music, so the drummer did. So I would tell him what I want to hear. I'm like, I want like, and that's how I want this to go. And he would write out the music of what I would do, that whole thing. And we'd mocked up the album cover, and it was the knife in the table that said "No Fate" from
Oh, it's
Terminator
brilliant.
2. And yeah, now
Yeah, did you have
I'm more proud
yeah,
of my
did you have
second.
somebody draw that?
Uh, no, actually, we took photo of a TV because you couldn't, we didn't have a
Yeah,
computer to be able to take a still frame. So we literally took a picture of the TV, paused on a VHS tape, and that way.
I love it.
But yeah, old school.
Fantastic.
And but I'm more proud of my second one was Wormhole, and it was
Very sci-fi.
yeah, but it was also Dragon-esque because it was WYRMHOLE instead of
Oh
W.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So
Like an
double
old
getting them
English kind of
double.
spelling.
And that
Yeah.
was the weirdest band I ever was in because I was the metal thrash guy and I played bass. My guitar player was a punk metal guy, a punk rock guy, and then my drummer was a like almost like Grateful Dead Fish kind of guy. So our music was really different by then.
Yeah, it's an interesting combination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we all got along.
Did it work out? Did it work pretty well to the music you
Well, it
good
was more of
tunes?
just a hobby little thing. We just played and goofed off together because we would my guitar player worked at my shop that I had at the time. My drummer was a regular customer, so he just brought his drum kit in, and we'd fiddle around and play while it was dead at the shop. And we never really did much outside of that. But yeah,
But did it sound good? Like the mix of all that
we had
influences sound okay?
we had fun with it. Yeah, it was. It almost came out to like a geez, like a sped up Deep Purple is the best way I could probably explain it.
Deep Purple's it's a good
Yeah,
that's a good foundation.
yeah. I mean, we didn't have the most complex, like solos or nothing because we just had one guitar player, me playing bass, and the drummer on a super basic drum. And like I said, it was just fun hanging out, playing around, and we never knew it. We never thought it was going to go anywhere. And we learned one cover. We learned NXS's New Sensation because that was right around the time when that guy died, and we were
Oh,
being
Michael
morbid.
Hutchins.
We were being really morbid, and it was,
Yeah.
so we thought being edgy and cool, but we're just being morbid and inappropriate. So
And you're bringing everybody to tears with your like tribute to the late Michael Hutchins
yeah,
with yeah.
no, we were not.
Yeah.
Literally, we were plotting to do a video, and my wife basically came up and went, "No, you're not
Oh,
making
okay.
that music video because we're going to do
Yeah.
new sensation. So you're going to be playing. All you're going to see is like the drummer playing the drum, me playing bass, and it was going to keep panning back and panning back. And then you were going to see that our pants were down around our ankles, but everything was covered with.
That's insensitive.
Yeah, and my
Yeah.
wife's like, no, 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 and I was like, yeah, maybe we should rethink that whole idea. But that was
Yeah.
and I was like, yeah, yeah, my wife has a good idea, and we need to not do that.
That's why you're married, man. They
Oh
they
yeah.
save you from these mistakes.
My
They
wife
really
has saved
do.
me so many bad mistakes. It's ridiculous. Um, so before we get going, one is what do you have? What kind of advice do you have for people breaking into the music industry, they getting into it themselves?
So, the way that I entered it was I really just wanted to play music that I really enjoyed personally. And it seems very difficult and very complicated to put together a track that sounds good. But there's a whole infrastructure of people that can help you get this done. You can download a DAW for free. The DAW that I use is Reaper. I think I have a Reaper license. It cost me $62, and you don't even really need to do that if you're not making commercial music. It works perfectly well. Um, and it's inexpensive to get into it. And I had a professional drummer lay down a track for one of my songs for $50. Um, with edits and everything sounds completely professional. So I would just get recording and build on, if it's not a complete song, just put something down a little bit at a time. My first song took me a year. I didn't, because there's a lot of things that you need to do. Is it just rhythm? And then you have to put down melody. You have to tie these pieces together. Do I let my guitar ring out? Do I add a fill? Like, these things take time, but these are kind of the little things. So I would just start doing it. It really is very easy to do with just by yourself or just with your bandmates, because of the technology that exists now. And if you think, well, I can't, I need to add bass, I need to add drums, even vocals. Like, I use Fiverr, I use SoundBetter. SoundBetter is a freelancer site for musicians. There's all kinds of guitarists, bassists, singers on there that can help you complete a track, even producers, mixing engineers. The one thing I would say is that if you have something that you've put down, definitely have it professionally mixed and mastered. That will make it sound radio quality, and it turns your song from a demo, even if you think it's finished, turns from a demo to something that's like, it just mind-blowingly sounds great to your ears. And then there's a lot, I would definitely spend the extra money and time it takes to promote your stuff online. It's not really purposeful to put something on Spotify and have only 4 or 5 people in your close circle listen to it. Pay the extra time and some money to have a professional promote it for you, get it onto curated playlists, so that you can get some streams up and some recognition. And then, find people like yourself, recognize it, see it on Instagram. And then you can get more exposure, and it kind of snowballs from there. So that would be my advice. And, just as a guitarist, I played to my absolute technical limit, right? I pushed it as far as I could go and maybe a little bit farther, because I had the ability to record it and record over it, and try again until I nailed a part. So I would say that the recording process itself gives you the chance to sound like your best self.
Yeah.
It gives you the opportunity, to put the best possible version of your work out there. And, in the 80s, that would have cost you thousands and thousands of dollars, and now it costs you nothing. It costs you the price of an audio interface to get your guitar linked into your computer. And that's really it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you told me you got to get people out there. Where can people find you online at?
Yeah, cool, man. So I'm on Instagram, Bane of Olympus, and my music is on every streaming platform. So Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, YouTube, everywhere. And I got a new single coming out September 20th. It's called Temple of the Gods, and it goes kind of with the theme of the overall arc of the band, the message of the band, the theme, trying to keep it cohesive. And I think it's in the same spirit as my other singles, and I think people will really like it. I think it's got one of my more emotional choruses as far as instrumentals can take you to that place. And yeah, and then I'm going to be collaborating soon with a guy overseas on an H.P. Lovecraft themed project that he's got going on.
Nice.
So yeah, again, this just kind of comes out of having your stuff out there, and my stuff's out there, but it's I'm not Taylor Swift. I don't have 100 billion streams. It really isn't that much, and it starts to really kind of take hold. So
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you so much for this exposure. It's been awesome talking to you.
I appreciate it, and thank you for doing the show. You mind if we use some of your music for the outro?
Of course. Yeah, go ahead, man. Yeah.
I've always like asking that, and I appreciate it. Hopefully, if everything goes right, it will drop this Thursday at 8 p.m. But if it doesn't, it will definitely drop by next Thursday, depending on my time schedule and what I have time for here.